Hello. This is Rich. Anyone else here?
Good morning, Rich.
Hey, Joe, how are you?
Doing well.
What's the weather like in Minneapolis?
Ooh, a nice balmy 67 degrees, getting up to 80. So, I mean, we're getting into that perfect season.
Yeah, yeah,
The season I just wish lasted longer and that winter didn't come.
yeah, for sure.
How about yourself? What kind
Um,
of joys do you get to enjoy?
well, right now I'm on vacation with my family in South Jersey, just north of Atlantic City on Brigantine Beach, and we have a home here, and it's a little bit overcast this morning, which it typically is, and then it clears up at noon. And it's forecasted to be like 85 today down here, and there's some storms potentially coming tonight. But we've had a really good 2 weeks so far. Um, Missing the bulk of the rain because it comes at night, so it's worked out pretty nice. So I hope that continues. Um, and So that's that.
Sounds pleasant.
I'm sorry.
Some time off. Sounds pleasant.
Yeah, it's great. I've got my three daughters and my son-in-laws here, and um, so it's nice. Um, Get to spend some time with them. You know, do some bonding with the boys. That kind of stuff. Right?
I'm looking forward to, we got our startup week coming up in less than 30 days in our
Ah,
region.
okay.
So I'm
So
doing a
what
lot of
what's
volunteering for that.
what's that all about?
Twin Cities Startup Week, a week of
Well, you know
celebrating
what?
companies that
Hey,
are kind of suits. Go
why
for it.
don't you save it until we start, and then tell us
Sure.
about it? Give you a free commercial.
Ooh, I mean, if I'm really going to throw a free commercial, we still have openings for sponsorships if anyone wants. $1,000
Okay,
and we'll put
well,
a 30 by 80
all right.
banner.
Okay, save it. Save it. 2 minutes.
Morning, Michael and Martin. I know Martin might be on a train, huh?
Yeah, Martin's on a train, and Michael should be joining. I talked to him yesterday, and
Good morning, Rich. Good morning,
oh, there he
everyone.
is. Hey, hey, Michael.
Hello, people. Yes, I'm here. I'm traveling in Malaysia, but I go on mute, and if I have reception, then I can come in if needed. I believe you will do well.
Hey, Martin.
Good morning, Gasaster für Schwager.
Oh,
Kosostofer?
Is this that general manager that's called
no,
Geschäftsführer,
Geschäftsführer.
isn't it?
Geschäftsführer.
Well, okay, I have too many syllables. Then the VP of operations in Germany is called Gesellschafter, isn't he? Gesellschafter, is that right? Like operations, the guy who runs the factory. Well, we lost Martin. The train went through a tunnel.
Okay. So is Roland here?
Yeah, just managed to enter. Had some
Ah,
troubles with
okay.
LinkedIn.
I thought you were out there lurking. Okay, good. Good.
Dr. Roland, good morning.
Hello, hello.
Okay, it's 10 a.m. on the East Coast, 9 a.m. Central Time, and was it 5 o'clock in Germany?
4
4
o'clock
o'clock.
it is.
4
Yeah.
o'clock. Yeah. So, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are, and to the people on stage as well as listening. So this is Rich McDonald. I'm sort of filling in today for Martin from a moderator standpoint. Several things that I wanted us to talk about today, and just get some viewpoints from all you guys. And then Joe has an announcement, so don't let me forget that, Joe. If you need 5 minutes, we can do that at the end. About a function that's happening up in his neck of the woods in Minneapolis, and we'll make sure that that gets covered. And some of the things I wanted to talk about today are, number one, humanoids, and that's one topic. Another topic is transfer innovation, my pet project currently. And then also wanted to get your viewpoint on, just a little bit of a touch on the automotive scenario, and maybe Roland, you could, give us a perspective of, what's happening in Germany of late. Volkswagen just made an announcement that they spun off their engine side of the business for $5.5 billion US to Bain Company, which just blew me away when I saw that. So I'm not sure, Roland, if you have any input on that or not, or just contribute about what's happening in the world at large there in Germany and in the EU. So let's start with this humanoid thing. There's been a lot of press lately, and a lot of articles and a lot of mentions of the humanoids, not only in the press but also on LinkedIn and other social media. I'm sure that I don't follow, but I certainly followed on LinkedIn. And there's the race for the humanoids, right? And Tesla's building theirs, and there's several other key manufacturers. And then there's a company that is a Chinese company that's really coming on strong in humanoids. That is just went public on the Shanghai market and raised over $900 million in a funding round. And personally, I thought that they were already beyond that, but and from a funding standpoint, but maybe that was just the domestic Chinese investments that have been made in the company that I'm confusing. In any event, the humanoid race is really, I think, indicative of almost the AI race, right? From the standpoint of resources contribution as far as, you know, funding and just the amount of attention, you know, since I really think that Elon Musk was really sort of responsible for bringing that to everyone's attention, and, you know, having these really glowing reports of the adoption rate of, you know, robots and humanoid robots, that is, and having them in, you know, outnumber the population of the U.S. eventually. And some of the articles that I've seen recently, and I'd like you guys to contribute to this, is you know, some of the aspects of, you know, the strengths of the company, you know, countries, and, you know, China being, you know, the most active country in deploying these, you know, at scale. And then I saw some other things about, you know, the lowering the cost of the actuators, you know, involved in, which is the key, you know, mechanism within humanoids for movement, and the lowering of the manufacturing cost of those to really position, you know, China as the leading producer. And I saw a post about humanoids where a gentleman said, you know, who's going to be the winner? And it was sort of interesting because he mentioned, you know, you've got China with the scale aspect, you've got China with the aspect of actuators, if I just mentioned, getting the cost out and, you know, performance up. And then you have you know, the AI piece, you know, coming from the US, and, you know, you've got you know, the factory automation, you know, expertise, and, you know, of the South Koreans, and the electronics coming from, you know, Taiwan, TSMC specifically. And, you know, basically, you know, some of those are going to have, you know, the NVIDIA technology. And, you know, his question was, in this post, was, you know, who's going to win? And, you know, I'd just like to get your viewpoint, guys, on, you know, what you think of, you know, that industry. Is it going to take off like, you know, Musk has predicted? You know, is it going to reach a mass adoption where eventually, you know, we're going to have a robot in the home or two, you know, depending on the size of your home and resources? What are your thoughts on that? And Roland, how about you?
Well, I read a few articles about that. I haven't seen the humanoid robots on the market yet. A couple of weeks ago, there was some post, I think, on LinkedIn, where some influencer wanted to buy one of those. I think it was from a Chinese company, maybe the same one which you mentioned. And the response was, if I recall correctly, access limited, so she couldn't buy it yet. So when it comes to robots, yeah, tremendous developments. I also read some articles about some Chinese factories in the underground where in total darkness, stealth jets are being assembled by robots, but not humanoid robots, as far as I recall. Coming to the humanoid robots, that will be very, very interesting. First of all, can you share a few more technical details? I think the AI aspect, the controlling system, is not a problem anymore, because if we see all these advances of artificial intelligence, I think it should be possible to manufacture a humanoid robot which performs very well in everyday situations. You mentioned actuators. Okay, that's a part of which is absolutely necessary for bringing about the movements. But what about batteries? I mean, are they powerful enough to really enable a human robot to function for, let's say, 24 hours? Do you have any information on that, Rich?
The batteries that I am aware of are not good for 24 hours. You know, at a duty cycle that's, you know, upwards of, you know, 80-90% duty cycle, my understanding is the batteries would be at best, you know, 8 hours. So, you know, basically a shift. And one of the things that I had read about was the you know, the robots basically coming back to the humanoid robots coming back to a charging station, you know, at a particular point in their duty on the floor. And as they would connect to be recharged, another one would disconnect and take over for that, you know, particular robot's working and functionality in the line or whatever it's doing. So when you think about the uptime, you know, you're talking about, you know, very, very little downtime if that indeed is true. You know, you may have a, you know, maybe a 5% downtime from that. And if you're running 3 shifts, you know, you just triple that, of course. But so that's my information on the battery life. But, you know, that could be dated information. The way the battery technology is changing today, you know, it's really hard to pin that down, I think. But that's the latest information that I have, Roland.
Say, Rich, Michael here.
Yeah.
So I think we're talking about a continuum. So, you know, the world is probably enamored with something that looks humanoid. Okay. So the 5 senses that God's given us, and whether or not you need the mobility. So we did a GE Smart House project, and going back many years, they had a kitchen of the future with 2 robot arms, and it could pick apples out of a glass enclosure in your countertop, and it could cook, it could do all kinds of things. So you have to think about what is the set of requirements that such a robot would do around the house, and like you said, Rich, you know, 8-hour shift in a factory. So you can take the mobility and you can set that aside. I mean, there's Hollywood movies from iRobot and Short Circuit, you know, so, you know, Robbie the Robot. So, you know, if the world thinks that a humanoid has to have 2 arms and 2 legs, that's kind of a, you know, the world is wanting these things to look like human beings. But if you think of the functions in factories, you know, 6-arm robots painting a car, and they're on tracks for a 6th axis of motion. So, you know, where do you why does it have to have eyes and a head? It can have vision sensors on the arms, just like tactile field robots have. They put it on the manipulator instead of on the base of the robot. So how do you define a humanoid, and why does it have to look like a human? And again, DARPA is doing soldiers that are on small track vehicles with an M60 machine gun. So they don't stand 6 feet tall. They don't have 2 legs. They've got tracks. So the requirements for the humanoids in the military may not look like a human being at all.
So Michael, I'd
how do
like to propose to you that, you know, inside your house, something that looks like Invasion from Mars, H.G. Wells, might be more scary than a more humanoid looking one. And you think about the sort of uncanny valley thing, but what sort of a robot makes you feel comfortable at home versus inside a factory? That might be part of the reason. I don't know.
Well, again, ideally, if you want a mate for life as an emotional novelty item, you're going to want hair and skin and everything else, you know. And in a world of AI, of course, the image of a human being has been out there for 10 years or more. So you're right. I don't disagree, David. The idea of the future having one of these look like a member of the family has a certain appeal. But why is the world aiming toward that rather than something that's better defined functionally, you know?
I don't think, first of all, I think the idea of making them truly human-like in appearance, I don't think that that's really the goal currently at all. I'm sure there's companies out there that are putting, you know, some type of prosthesis on their face and having their eyes move, etc. But I think that's more for entertainment than anything else. The majority of the humanoids, as they're called, don't look anything like a human. They're strictly a mechanical monstrosity, if you would, and a mechanical being. And they have from a head standpoint, there are all sorts of different shapes, but there's no facial features on there at all. Most are flat, almost like a flat screen or a curved, surface, etc. But so I don't think that humanoid look and bringing it to a human level look is really their goal at all. I think that they pretty much stayed away from that for adoption reasons, frankly. And I think there's certainly going to be a market niche, of course, for robots that do look like a human, if you would, and for different purposes, and whether that be pleasure or something else. But I think at this time, the humanoids are very mechanical and very mechanical looking, and that's where
I have a huge reason to offer for this, because they're going to be training for people's jobs, and it's much easier to do the biomimicry with a humanoid-like robot in the way that it actuates and the way that it moves, because it's going to be doing functions that humans were formerly doing. So the training purposes alone may be a valuable shorthand to use something kind of similar in shape and size.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree. This is Jürgen, ex-BMW. It's much, all the working spots, working stations are tuned towards human beings, and it's much easier to replace them with something with legs and arms in a human size. The head is not really the most important part, but it gives it a little bit more credibility. I have put into the chat a little video where you can see the demonstrations in different in South Carolina, Leipzig, and where they do some testing.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. There's at least one area where humanoid robots must have human features. That's the care sector, elderly care and injured people. I don't know whether you have the same situation as we do have in Germany, but the care stations are understaffed. And I think one of the really concrete applications of humanoid robots is to use them in care for patients or elderly persons. And then, of course, they should have a really human appearance, because that makes it more comfortable for patients to interact with them. So that's really a must to have these humanoid robots.
This is the first humanoid I think I will purchase, as I'm already socializing my parents as they age, that expect that I'm going to have a robot try and help and pick you up, because I will probably still be at a job at the point that they age.
Yeah, when I was traveling in Japan frequently, some years ago now, but even back then, Tokyo University was working on a huge program for elderly care robots, and picking them up out of bed was, one of the key, aspects of and being able to pick them up from a standing position and then, lay them in the bed and then take them out of bed. you know, that function was a key driver for their development purposes. And I don't know where they're at on that. I haven't seen anything, you know, that's really indicative of that, because the power requirements back then were, you know, significant, and the actuator technology just, you know, wasn't there yet. You know, today, where are we is, you know, is a question. You know, can they do that? But I have no doubt in my mind that we're going to get there. And Joe, I'm not sure the age of your parents, but, you know, I can see my children, you know, doing that for me potentially. But, you know, I'm 6'2" and 250 pounds, so it's not an easy thing to pick up, right? As a dead weight, you know, if that ever happened to me. But you know, it's going to be a challenge for any robot to do that.
Say,
And
Rich,
you know,
Rich,
the power
I just-
requirements, etc. Yeah, Michael.
Yeah, I just picked up I was Googling here. So there's a 6-arm robot in China. The company is Hangzhou, Hangzhou. So it looks humanoid, but it has 3 arms on each side. And they show the advantages of 6 arms. So they show it in the kitchen. And of course, it's doing things that might take 2 or 3 2-arm humanoids to do. But they show it in a machine shop running a lathe. So you think of all the advantages of multiple arms. And I think there was a Hollywood movie where the arms weren't just, you know, 2 or 3 joints and 5 axis. The arms were actually like a flexible, uh, with hundreds of joints, so that the arms can go into a motion plane that's even more complex and challenging than robot arms that have an elbow and a wrist and fingers. So, you know, I kind of like the idea. This one has a head, and the face looks like a monitor. Of course, it has vision. So it doesn't have humanoid, it doesn't have a nose. It just sort of has a curved screen on its head. But you know, I think that defining the function in industry is very different than putting these things. Let's say, oh, right now I'm watching it in a chef's kitchen in a gourmet restaurant. So it's got 6 arms and it's cooking 5-course dinner all at once, because you need multiple arms to do that. So there you go.
Well,
Yeah, I
okay.
think there's another argument for it, and that is that with the humanoid form, it is maybe easier to get used to see robots in the public. So if you see them at the work or in a restaurant, if you give them very strange shapes, then people may be more scared about them. So it will also take some time for people to be used to see robots. I was just listening to a podcast this morning where they were talking about robots in the construction side. And they were estimating that on the construction, we will see a lot of different shapes coming up. And especially for heavy duty vehicles or transporting material upstairs or downstairs within buildings. Humanoid form is probably not the best form factor. You can think about more maybe on tracks or 4 legs or 6 legs. It could be a spider form that has all kind of different arms to lift up bags or other raw materials you need for construction. So I think in the next coming years, we will see a lot of different shapes from robots that will be developed and tested. So China is definitely very far ahead in testing a lot on this. As you just mentioned, the 6-armed robot that they are testing. They also, Unitree was just a couple of weeks ago releasing their basically, I think it was a 3-meter version of a robot that they released more like as a toy, but it's open to buy. So it really looks like a big mesh that you could basically sit inside and then steer. We will see a lot of different shapes.
Yeah, Christoph, it's interesting. There's a company in the US that's all over the internet, Boston Dynamics. So I don't know if any of
Yes.
you have seen it. So they have a robot dog, but
Mm.
they're humanoid. They're humanoid. I think going back as far as 7 or 8 years ago. They had one that could do a somersault in the air and come back on its feet. They had another one going up and down stairs. They had one lifting items off of a pallet and stacking them, which of course is really an interesting function in warehouses and all that. But I think the interesting thing is I think the human in Boston Dynamics is there trying to do a boxing match with the robot. And I'm sitting here thinking that it looks very dangerous because, you know, one wrong swing and this thing could take the guy's eye out, but he trusted the software enough to actually do a pseudo boxing match at the Boston Dynamics website. So I think it's really cool if one of these can stand up and do a somersault or climb stairs. But you know, what's the job function? You know, if Boston Dynamics wants to impress the world, I'd say keep on going. But you know, do you really need that to spray paint a car? Do you really need that to run a machine tool? Do you need that in a chef's kitchen? But it's I think Boston Dynamics probably has government contracts here in the US.
Well, I can give you an example. I just heard here from Guangzhou. There is a very big fish factory here. They are growing fish and then cutting the fish up to put them into cans or just into the restaurants. And that fish farm has a big problem. They are not able to find anyone who wants to cut the fish. Young people, they don't want to stand there 8 hours a shift to just fillet a fish. So they are talking now to one of the different robot manufacturers here. I think it's Agibot, which is from Guangzhou, to develop a robot, either an arm or humanoid form, who will cut the fish because they can't find anyone.
Yeah.
So there will be a lot of different blue-collar jobs where the people are growing out of it. They have other dreams. They don't dream about standing in a fish factory cutting fish.
Yeah, Christoph, to that point, I was at Georgia Tech, and in one of the labs there that I was in, we were looking at a Tyson, which is a huge chicken producer here, had the exact same scenario, and their function at Georgia Tech in their robotics area was to develop a robotics for basically deboning the chicken, right? And being able to do that so that, you know, the retention of the meat and was, you know, a very high percentage, and, you know, still had a very pleasing looking, you know, piece of chicken, right, at the end, as opposed to something all shredded, right? And so they were working, you know, diligently on that for Tyson, so for that exact same, you know, purpose, because they just could not find workers, right? And they knew that they were going to be facing a worker shortage in the future.
Well, Rich,
so
you know, in the main, Rich, I think I wrote to you yesterday, menial labor jobs that are unskilled are the prime opportunity for these companies to go in and cut costs, right? Who wants to spray paint a car all day? And you know, 30 years ago, that's the way cars were painted, or maybe 50 years ago. So it would take thousands of people in the paint booths of the automotive companies all over the world. And now those functions are easily robotic. So is welding. Who wants to do a multi-spot welding station at a Fisher body plant? You know, so take even the garment workers in New York City, who I think there was a fire, right? So who wants to sew buttons on shirts that are sold at Walmart? And maybe that's still manual labor, but eventually, you know, I think there's still a very large population of workers in the garment industry worldwide. You just can't take even a really fancy humanoid robot and get it to do a tailor-made suit for someone. That's all, you know, custom work, and it's all done by hand. So those jobs, I'm sure, are being attacked, and it's a continuum. But you know, who knows what's next? You know, the total lights out factory, GE and GM and everybody were working toward a a locomotive plant, I think outside of Erie, Pennsylvania, to try and make a Dash 8 locomotive, including the engine, and totally without human involvement. And that was never achieved.
Yeah, going back to Roland's comment, I think, patient care and elderly care, not only from a companionship standpoint, but also from a physical engagement standpoint, if you would, with the patient, is going to be a huge market opportunity. And I haven't seen anything that's really focused on that. Now one of the humanoid companies could be focusing on that as a secondary market, or maybe even a primary. I'm not aware of it, but something that I'll certainly check into, because I'm interested to see what's going on there, just from what I had seen in Japan, but and see where it's at today, because that was quite some time ago now. But I think the overall architecture of the robot is still, in any of these environments that we just discussed, are going to be very very mechanical looking, and still in the fish and the food and the chicken arenas, of course, they're going to be shielded from any kind of contact with the food that is falling off, so to speak, and coming in contact with the robot. So I could see that being shielded, and with some kind of either a fabric or material that that can be go through a wash down sequence after its shift or something, for sterilization. That's going to happen, and that's going to be yet another aspect to the care of the robot. How do you maintain that, which brings up another dimension to this whole humanoid thing. Is how are they going to be maintained? Who's going to do that? And what company is going to be doing that? All these producers are thinking about the production of those humanoids, but how do they take that forward and service those humanoids in the future? That's
And are they going to be able to handle the radiation bio cleanse that they're going to need?
Yeah.
I say this as an example for there's a recent beef plant that just shut down and fired 1,000 employees. And so in the next age of manufacturing, if you're going to bring a new meat plant back up online, you're not going to do it the way that you did in the past. And so if you are going to get to the point where robots are being part of the processing, salmonella is such an issue from the drains of the facilities that a lot of these facilities have a caustic foam that is just on the entire floor. So that way nothing can come back up from the drain. It's always just being sterilized. But if you're going to take this for robot levels and the actual equipment needs to be sanitized, well, in med device, often they put it through a radiation chamber. And that's one of the ways that it sterilizes. And can the equipment then handle, if you're bringing it into this radiation chamber, and cleansing it of any bacteria before you put it back to service?
Yeah, an autoclave as well.
Well, Rich, there could be an S curve coming along, and I want to call it how we get our protein. Okay, so you can use hard automation to make hot dogs, and Armour Swift started doing that 100 years ago. So how we get our protein? Will the world still want a steak that is basically a unique shape, every single one? But then you get ground meat that could be totally automated, ground beef, and like you said, for chicken farms, from the farm to the slaughter of the chicken, and so you can get chicken, you can get turkey burgers that are ground, and then a lot of people still like a Thanksgiving turkey, right? So I think the values and lifestyles of how we get our protein could change. You can get Gorton's fish sticks that are mincemeat, right? So the idea of getting a fish that has a head on it at a gourmet, deli versus a piece of salmon that certainly is kind of semi-custom. They all have different shapes, and to get a robot to skin and fillet the piece of salmon we get at a supermarket, but then you can get chopped up. You buy a can of tuna, right? I'm sure people still like to buy a tuna that looks like a fish. And in a restaurant, you don't order tuna and get a can of StarKist brought to your table. But I think the retail and the food service industry is probably going to see some step changes, and protein is a good part of it. Look at eggs, okay? You can get eggs 19 different ways, including artificial eggs, but people still like to break their eggs on a Sunday morning, and why is that? Well, you don't need to sell, but people still like to buy them that way.
And they still like to add their eggs to their brownie mix because the brownie mix is too easy if it's just mix.
There you go. Yeah, would you take a carton of cholesterol-free eggs and use that to make your brownies, Joe? Or probably not, right?
No, I want to feel like I'm making it with grandma and I have to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the food industry is definitely ripe for humanoids. There's no doubt about it. Patient care. We talked about manufacturing. I mean, so there's all these low-level jobs, as you said, Michael, that could be ultimately replaced, by humanoids. But I mean, it's going to take some time, from a deployment and training aspect, for that to happen. I think what's going to be really critical is basically the initial beachhead killer app, so to speak, to get these humanoids adopted, is going to be the key thing that these companies need to be focused on is how do they do that, and how do they identify those beachhead markets for themselves,
There's
that can
another one, Rich.
be
Okay,
substantial.
So there's another one, Rich. Produce harvesting. Okay, so people in the grape harvesting in the wineries have done mechanical harvesting now. You think of how oranges are picked in Florida. So, and you think of Orange Man and doing the immigration thing. So the people in the fields, I think it's possible to automate picking carrots out of the ground, right? That could even be hard automation. But I think in the harvesting of grapes, there's still a large portion of product that goes to waste if you try and do it with a mechanical harvester by shaking the vines. So, you think of the millions of workers in the San Joaquin Valley, and can you harvest almonds, avocados, lettuce? Can you do that with humanoids out in the field? And you go to China, can you replace the people in the rice paddies with robots? And think of the millions of people who are involved in making tea and rice in China. It's enormous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's also another aspect to this whole story. And by the way, congratulations, Rich, you picked a fantastic topic for today's talk. Okay. Let's bring together some thoughts which have been voiced here. I think it was Christoph who said humanoid robots are more accepted by the society if they look human-like, as contrasted with, let's say, 6-armed robots, which surely would be perceived as mechanical items. And Joe frequently mentioned this aspect about changing of working society, that the human robots are taking away jobs. And now there is another very, very important and interesting aspect. Christoph, directly answering to you, it even goes further. I mean, if you interact with a humanoid robot something which is really mimicking the outer appearance of a human person, you might be inclined to accept that as a human being. Now I want to ask a question to you. Do you still play computer games? Because I, together with my wife, do so frequently. And a couple of years ago, there was a fantastic computer game. I don't do advertisement anymore because it's outdated already, but it was years ahead of society development, and it was exactly about this topic which we are talking right now. The game is called Detroit. I don't know if anybody of you knows it. And it's about a not so distant future where we exactly have humanoid robots which do exactly that, what Joe said. They take away jobs from humans because they are bought by humans, and of course some other humans are not very happy about losing their jobs. And the ultimate objective of the game is you play a robot there, and you want the robots be recognized as an independent race with equal rights compared to humans. And when I was playing this game, I was not able really to distinguish between humans and between robots. You don't see a humanoid robot as some mechanical engineering piece of engineering anymore. If it behaves in a human way and even in a humane way, meaning that it's maybe more intelligent or more, not an asshole compared to a human being, then you interact with it just like it was a human being. There's even one sequence in this game where you have the option of executing a robot. I wasn't able to do that. Maybe some other people are able to do that. So the point is, if those humanoid robots are in our society, and if they behave like humans in a meaningful way, in a decent way, it's not a question of accepting them better like compared to normal mechanical units. The question is even, wow, can we still distinguish that? And how are we going to treat that? I have another personal experience to share, which underlines my point. A couple of years ago, one of these famous electronic chains in Germany really put a robot into their premises. It was not a humanoid robot. It was something like, comparable to a snowman. So vaguely human shape, of course, had eyes and some loudspeaker, which was meant to be the mouth. The shape was not very human at all, really like a snowman. And you could ask this robot, where can I find, let's say, USB sticks? Where can I find flat screen, stuff like that? And when you did that, it would guide you to the proper position. Nobody used it. Maybe people felt embarrassed. I didn't use it either. But strangely enough, I felt sorry for this little piece of metal because nobody used it. So this underlines how we as humans interact with machines which look somehow human-like. And I think if we just focus on how are they being maintained, or even to the much more important questions, how are they to compete with human workers for workplaces, we still miss another very, very important aspect of the whole story. How are they going to affect our society? I don't know if you have any personal thoughts about that or even personal experiences, but that's certainly something which is worth mentioning and discussing. So over to you.
Yeah, I was just checking actually on YouTube for gameplay on the game. Detroit Became Human is the game. I have not played this one, so I don't know. But I was watching last year a Netflix show. I just put the name into the chat. It called Humanes, and it basically exactly covers this topic. I'm not sure if it was a UK show or an American show, but it was one of the better dramas where they basically tell the stories, the human stories, when you have humanoids in public in the society, and then all the small problems that come up with that. I mean, very typical one, for example, is you have an elderly man who has a younger humanoid robot. So they basically all look like human, but they're robots. And he is developing a father role for this humanoid. And then that humanoid breaks, and he feels so sorry because he had this feeling that is his son. So then there is a service, basically a repair service coming over to replace his robot because they say like, hey, your unit is broken. We give you a new one. And this elderly man is saying, no, I want to keep it. You know, I will not give it to you. He's not here, and he's just hiding it in the closet because he is emotionally so attached to the humanoid robot that he doesn't want to lose it. So it is an interesting show. It's not too long, 4 seasons, 3 seasons. So if you have some time, I think it describes these social conflicts that will come up quite nice.
I'll definitely try to see that if I can get hold on it. Sounds very interesting.
Christoph, is that the one where the older gentleman is actually the inventor of the humanoid?
No. It's
okay.
it's just one of the guys in the
Okay.
show.
Because there's a movie, I'm trying to remember the name of it, where there's a humanoid with the elderly man, and he sort of falls in love with it, but the humanoid becomes his partner in crime, literally. And basically, the company comes and says, hey, we need to replace it because it's, our instrumentation is saying that there's, some problems with its thinking and some of its actions. And he's like, no, it's fine, and for the life of me, I can't remember the name of that movie, but it's really entertaining. And basically, it's how he had ultimately ended up retraining the robot himself to think a little bit more, devilishly, if you would, right, than it was intended to, and how he was able to get it to think differently, outside of the lab, so to speak, in his home, and through reasoning. And it's very interesting. It's very cleverly done. Okay,
Robot and
so
Frank, starring Frank Langella.
yeah, that's
chat.
it. Yeah, it's really good. Thank you. Appreciate that, David.
It is really good. And the other one that it's worth reading, is Heinlein's Jerry Was a Man, which doesn't do robots, but genetically engineered monkeys that are, have a 90 IQ. Do we start treating them as humans? But it's the same set of questions, in my view.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that one or heard of it. Interesting. Okay, so we have
to know that one.
That's interesting. I mean, Hollywood has presented presented us this topic for decades now, and now we see that all pieces fall into place. There's still a bottleneck in battery technology. The robotics are perfectly suited to do what humanoid robots need to do. And in the past 3-4 years, we have seen that artificial intelligence is perfectly able to take the role of the human brain and to perform complex operations. So the future has arrived. It's here now, people. Yeah. And I'm wondering what we will be talking about 2 years or 3 years from now. Well, interesting. Very, very interesting. By the way, do you still remember the 80s where the Tamagotchis came over from Japan? I mean, very, very far away from a humanoid robot. It was just a computer program. But I remember stories from school children who were reprimanded by the teachers during class. They should not focus on the Tamagotchis, and then they took away the Tamagotchis from them, and then the Tamagotchi died because it did not get the attention it needed for, and the children psychologically broke down. That was just a computer simulation on some egg-shaped thing. And now we are talking about interacting with really humanoid robots. Very interesting times ahead of us.
Yeah, very, very disruptive times ahead of us, right? It'll be interesting to see how, not only the adoption, but also the aspect of how people recognize and interface with the robots, and the potential backlash of people having them in the workplace, whether it be a factory or some other environment at home or in a store or whatever. I can remember when I first started in sales, and this is dating myself now, but in the 1980s, and I was calling on factories and calling on petrochem plants for Honeywell. Basically at that time it was anti-Japanese and anything of that nature, because of the the car industry primarily, and in the car factories. I mean, it was in the auto plants in Detroit. It was a really rough place, right? And there's people throwing tools at one another, and breaking machinery to take a break, and I mean, that stuff really happened. And and I think back to those days, and I think about, I mean, that's just human to human interaction. What's going to happen with a robot that's there, and taking away a job, or replacing a human, or augmenting a human. What's that reaction going to be? But it's a new generation of people too, so maybe that will be more receptive to that. So you're right, Roland. It's a very very unique time that we're in. Okay, so this is 10:51. Hey, Joe, why don't you give us your commercial on the startup event that you've got going on in Minneapolis?
Sure. The Twin Cities, both Minneapolis and St. Paul, is hosting a startup week on September 14th through the 18th. All are welcome. I think tickets are available now. If you know any company that's willing to do a sponsorship at $1,000, we're also doing standing banners, 30-inch by 80-inch advertisement banners that'll be brought to all the events throughout the week. Something else I want to invite everyone to is just reach out to your networks. Make sure that you engage them. Provide as much value as you can, and connecting across your network, people to other people, and helping them break down their barriers for success. So that's the whole purpose of the week that we're doing. We're really doing a lot of networking, a lot of meeting people, and by those people meeting people, that's where you end up sharing other resources. Here's the person I need to connect you with. And that's why our startup ecosystem is well engaged, while it's something that I thoroughly enjoy participating in every year.
How many people are at that event typically?
Oh, it used to be in the thousands before COVID, and it's starting to ramp back up. I'm expecting over the course of the event, probably 2,000 different variations of people. It'll also be the week of Target having their weekly retreat at Target Corporate. So we'll probably see a lot of the people that go to the Target events during the day, but in the night, they might be coming to the rest of the Startup Week ecosystem.
So what's a typical day look like at this event?
We'll have a variety of parallel speakers on. I'm going to give a speech on risk management as an example, risk management in the startups. That's because my background comes from doing risk management for my industrial control systems for companies like Cargill, water treatment, food and beverage, medical device, semiconductors, manufacturing in general. So I'm going to bring my expertise and offer what I know about risk management, that Pareto chart of the more severe, frequent, and occurrent that something is, or without detection, that adds risk, and how to make corrective or preventative actions to it. So everyone that's in the startup ecosystem can offer to host their events. I know there'll be a couple on motivation, couple that'll be career coaches. There'll be an entire day of investor talks and talking about VC, what the route of VC is. We'll have a whole day on Friday about hackathon, where I might be bringing in a bunch of controls and electrical circuit projects, just so that way I can teach the community what you can do with them. And I'll play on my hackathon as hey, just for fun, I want a piece that goes to the Minneapolis Art Institute, and maybe I can get one of the modern art pieces and see who can hack it to a valuable of teaching people with electronics. So that might be my purpose of a hackathon for the day. The topics will include we'll have quite a few keynote speakers from companies that have succeeded in the area. We've had the Star Tribune CEO come and give talks before. There'll be a fair amount probably covering cybersecurity, because that is a growing concern. Tonight, as an instance, we have our monthly cybersecurity group that meets up. So we've got these groups that meet up in cybersecurity, medical device manufacturing, aerospace manufacturing, and a chunk of those individuals that are engaged will be throughout the week.
So are these typical entrepreneurs that are there, or are they startups, or what's the audience makeup?
Breakdown. I'm going to say 20% of the people are probably looking for work, which is an interesting part. They're in that in-between step, and they find more engagement with the startup companies that are networking with each other. A lot of the people are, I'll say a chunk of them will be like fractional C chairs, where they worked up to career spots and they found themselves maybe not having enough daily work inside of one company. So they end up doing it fractionally for many.
Yeah,
and
sure.
so there'll be anything from small business to companies like 3M have sponsored in the past, Target sponsored in the past. In our Twin Cities area, we have some of the highest level of Fortune 500 companies per capita. I know our startup ecosystem doesn't really go for venture capital as much. They end up being priced on their rounds significantly lower, but they have a bit higher of a success rate. And I'm hoping that continues. We're always looking for another startup that has a huge success and exit, so that way it can help fund the next generations of startups.
Cool. Okay.
Thank you for that opportunity, Rich.
Oh yeah, sure. Glad you mentioned it before we started it today. That's great. So what are the dates on that again, Joe?
That'll be September 14th through 18th, and you can find it by Twin Cities Startup Week 2026.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
okay.
It sounds pretty much like startup events, which I frequently go to in Germany. It's a nice mix, lots of startups, lots of people from the ecosystem. So VCs and companies supporting startups, and people just being interested. Nice mix of keynote speeches, presentations of startups, and of course, lots of possibilities to network during the sessions. So yeah, interesting. I can't make it to Minneapolis next in September, sorry, but interesting to hear.
Well, then I'll nudge you for next year, maybe plan on it, because we'll have another one next year as well.
That's a nice head up. Thanks.
We'll put a year in advance. I will happily host any evening party for the group from this that decides to meet up.
Awesome.
That's a promise, huh? Okay.
I'll promise on that.
Okay. Good. All right. It's 10:58. So before we start something new, I'll sign off here, and thanks everyone for your contributions today.
One little thing on the Volkswagen deal. I put an interesting article. It's in German, but Google Translate does the deal on the reasoning, because this is a company that makes industrial engines for power plants, for big ships, and so on, and they're making money. Unbelievable. But they're selling their silverware. So this is a little bit background. This is an economical magazine, what looks at it a little bit.
Yeah,
Did you
maybe our
happen
topic for
to-
next year? Next week.
Did you happen to
Yeah, it's
send us
just
that
a link.
article?
Yeah, the link is in the chat.
Awesome. Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay, gentlemen. Yeah, thank you again, and have a great day, and thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. Very interesting listening. I got about 80%. Thank you. See you next week.
Yep.
He's
See you.
alive.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.